The diner was bustling with the usual lunchtime crowd when Tiffany, a young waitress with a warm smile and quick feet, noticed a familiar face walk through the door. Clint Eastwood, legendary actor and director, walked in as though he were just another customer. He was dressed simply, dark jeans, a faded jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low to obscure his features. Most people didn't recognize him right away, which suited Clint just fine. He preferred to blend in, enjoy a quiet meal, and leave without fanfare. Tiffany, having worked at the diner for several years, had seen her fair share of celebrities pass through, but something about Clint Eastwood made her heart skip a beat. She had grown up watching his movies, admiring his tough guy persona on screen. But as a waitress, she had learned to keep her composure no matter who walked in. She smiled to herself, reminding herself that celebrities were people too, and she was here to do a job. She walked over to Clint's table, her notepad in hand, and greeted him with the usual warmth she offered every customer. "Hi there. What can I get for you today?" Clint looked up, giving her a brief nod, his steely, blue eyes studying her for a moment before he replied, "I'll have a cup of coffee and the special. Just keep it simple." Tiffany jotted down the order, keeping her voice steady despite the racing thoughts in her head. It wasn't often she found herself in the presence of someone like Clint Eastwood, and it was hard not to feel starstruck. But she quickly shook off the feeling. After all, she had a job to do. She returned to the kitchen to put in the order, then brought Clint his coffee and the meal he had requested. She placed the coffee cup gently in front of him and set down his plate, making sure everything was just right. "Here you go. Enjoy your meal," she said, giving him a friendly smile before turning to leave. Before she could walk away, Clint spoke, his gravelly voice cutting through the hum of the diner. "Thank you," he said, looking up at her again, his expression softening just slightly. "You seem like someone who's got a lot of heart." Tiffany, caught off guard by his comment, turned back toward him. Thanks," she replied, a little flustered. "I try my best." Clint gave a small smile, the corners of his lips twitching upwards, and nodded. "I can tell. It's not always easy, is it?" Tiffany hesitated for a moment before responding, her voice a little quieter. "No, it's not. But it's a job and someone's got to do it." He looked at her for a long moment, his eyes full of understanding. "You're right about that. Keep doing what you're doing, and remember, sometimes the small things you do for people have a bigger impact than you realize." Tiffany nodded, not fully understanding why he was saying this, but sensing that there was something deeper in his words. She smiled politely and went back to her duties, wondering if she had just been reading too much into the encounter. A little while later, as the lunch rush started to die down, Tiffany went to check on Clint again. She found him finishing his meal, quietly sipping his coffee. As she approached his table, he looked up at her, and this time, he held out a folded napkin with his name written on it in neat handwriting. "Here," he said, offering it to her. "I wanted to give you something." Tiffany hesitated, unsure of what it was. But with a polite nod, she took the napkin from him, unfolding it carefully. Her eyes scanned the words written there, her heart beginning to race. Clint had written her a short note, one that wasn't just a generic thank you or praise for her service. "I see the way you carry yourself," the note read. "You're doing more than just getting by. You're making a difference with every kind gesture, every smile, and every person you serve. Don't ever underestimate the power of what you do. Keep going, Tiffany. You're meant for something greater than you know." Her breath caught in her throat as she read those words. She felt a rush of emotion flood her chest, her eyes welling up with tears. Tiffany hadn't expected anything like this, especially not from someone as famous as Clint Eastwood. But those words, written so simply and directly, struck her deeply. It was as if Clint had seen something in her that she hadn't even noticed in herself. She looked up at him, and Clint was watching her intently, his expression unreadable. There was no hint of arrogance or pride in his face, just a quiet sense of knowing, as though he had seen the struggles she had gone through, and he was telling her, without saying it aloud, that she was doing well, that she was enough. Tiffany didn't know what to say. The words she wanted to speak caught in her throat, and all she could do was nod slowly, tears streaming down her face. She didn't care if anyone in the diner saw her crying. Clint's note had touched something, deep inside her, something she hadn't realized had been there for so long. Tiffany's life continued to unfold in ways she had never imagined. As she balanced her work at the diner with her studies, she found herself growing in confidence. Each day, she carried the note Clint had given her, and each day, it reminded her that her efforts, no matter how small, were worth something. Every time she faced a challenge, whether it was a difficult class or a moment of doubt, she would read the words he had written and feel a renewed sense of purpose. Her transformation didn't go unnoticed. Her co-workers at the diner, who had known her as a hardworking but sometimes hesitant young woman, began to see the change. They noticed how she interacted with customers, how she was more patient and understanding, and how she always seemed to have a smile for everyone, even on the hardest days. Tiffany had become more than just a waitress. She had become someone who inspired those around her, just as Clint had inspired her. One afternoon, months after Clint's visit, Tiffany was waiting on a table when a familiar face entered the diner. She didn't need to look twice to know who it was. Clint Eastwood had walked in again as quietly and unassumingly as ever. Her heart skipped a beat. Even though she had become more accustomed to working around celebrities during her time at the diner, there was something different about seeing Clint again. This time she felt a deep sense of gratitude toward him, more than she had the first time he had walked through those doors. She took a deep breath, straightened her apron, and made her way over to his table. "Hi there," she said, her voice steady but warm. "Back again, huh?" Clint looked up and smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Just needed a little break from the world," he said with a wink. "I thought I'd come back to the place that seemed to appreciate a good cup of coffee." Tiffany nodded, feeling a swell of emotion rise in her chest. "I'm glad you're back. It's nice to see you again." Clint didn't immediately place his order. Instead, he looked at her thoughtfully, as though taking in the changes he had seen in her. "You've been doing well, haven't you?" he asked, his voice low and observant. Tiffany hesitated, a little surprised by the question. She had grown so much since their last encounter, but hearing Clint acknowledge it felt surreal. "I've been trying," she replied with a smile. "I've actually gone back to school studying social work now. I'm hoping to make a difference in people's lives." Clint nodded approvingly. "That's good to hear," he said. "I knew you had it in you." The words were simple, but they hit Tiffany like a wave. She had worked hard to get to this point, and hearing Clint say that he believed in her, that he had always believed in her, filled her with a sense of validation and pride she hadn't known she needed. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your note, it really helped me believe that I could do it, that I could be more than just this job." Clint looked at her, his expression softening. "You always had it in you, Tiffany. Sometimes it just takes someone else to remind you of that. But you're the one who did the work. Keep going and you'll get where you need to be." Tiffany felt the tears well up in her eyes once again. She had never expected to hear words like that from anyone, let alone Clint Eastwood, someone she had admired for so long. And yet here he was, reminding her of her strength, her potential, and her worth. "I will," she whispered, her voice shaky. "I promise I will." As Clint finished his meal, he left her a generous tip, more than she had ever seen in all her years at the diner. But it wasn't the money that stayed with her. It was the message he had given her, the encouragement, the belief that she was capable of achieving something greater, not just for herself but for the world around her. That night, after her shift ended, Tiffany sat in her small apartment, holding the note from Clint once again. She thought about how far she had come since the day she had first received it, the day she had burst into tears in the diner. She thought about the people she had met along the way, the challenges she had overcome, and the dreams she was now actively pursuing. Her journey wasn't easy, but it was hers. And with each passing day, she grew more and more confident in the idea that she was, in fact, capable of making a difference. Clint's words had planted a seed in her, and now that seed was blossoming into something real. As she went to bed that night, Tiffany knew that there would be many more challenges ahead, but she also knew that she was no longer afraid of them. She had learned, through Clint's kindness and her own resilience, that no matter where she started, it was never too late to change, to grow, and to reach for something bigger than what she had once imagined. As time went on, Tiffany's life continued to evolve in ways she had never anticipated. The community she had become a part of through her work at the diner and her studies in social work began to grow too. She started volunteering at local shelters and community centers, applying the lessons she had learned about empathy and listening. Each encounter with those in need became an opportunity to pay forward the kindness that Clint Eastwood had shown her, no matter how small the gesture. One evening, while Tiffany was volunteering at a community outreach program, she received a call that would mark another pivotal moment in her journey. It was from a social worker she had worked with on a case, someone who had heard about Tiffany's progress and wanted to connect her with a new opportunity. "We've got a program coming up," the social worker said. "It's a mentorship program for at-risk youth. We need someone who's been through the struggles and come out the other side. Someone who knows how to guide these kids, give them hope, and show them that there's more to life than the circumstances they were born into. I think you'd be perfect for it." Tiffany felt her heart race. She had been working towards something like this for so long. This was the moment when everything she had learned, all the things she had overcome, could be used to help others, in ways she had once only dreamed about. "I'd love to," she said, her voice steady but filled with excitement. I'm ready to give back." The following months saw Tiffany immersed in her new role. She became a mentor to several young people, some of whom had faced unimaginable hardships. She worked with them on everything from life skills to emotional healing, helping them find their voices and realize their potential. There were tough days, of course, days when it felt like no progress was being made or when it seemed as though the weight of the world was too heavy to bear. But there were also days filled with breakthroughs, moments when a child would open up or make a decision that showed growth. And those were the moments that made it all worthwhile. As she worked with the program, Tiffany found herself recalling the lessons Clint had taught her, the belief that the small things mattered, the reminder that what she did for others, even when it felt like a small effort, could have a ripple effect. Every smile, every act of kindness, every conversation, it all made a difference. Sometimes it was the smallest encouragement that planted the seed of change. One day, after a particularly successful session with a group of at-risk youth, Tiffany received another unexpected message. This time, it wasn't from Clint, but from one of her former professors at community college. The professor had heard about her work and wanted to meet with her to discuss an opportunity that could help her expand her reach in the community even further. "I've been following your progress, Tiffany," the professor said, his voice warm and full of praise. "I think you have the potential to do some incredible things in the field of social work. There's a new program starting up in the city, one that focuses on mental health and wellness for underserved communities. They're looking for someone with hands-on experience, someone who knows the struggle. I think you'd be an excellent fit." Tiffany's mind raced as she listened to the details of the program. This was the chance she had been waiting for, the opportunity to take everything she had learned and pour it into something even bigger, something that could reach people on a wider scale. She knew it would require sacrifices, but she also knew it was a challenge she was ready to face. "I'm in," she said without hesitation. "Let's do this." As Tiffany began preparing for her new role in the mental health program, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. She had once been a waitress in a small diner, struggling to find meaning in her life. Now she was a mentor, a volunteer, and a budding professional in the field of social work, ready to make a lasting impact on the lives of others. She had faced challenges, doubts, and fears, but each time, she had found the strength to push through. And none of it would have been possible without the small but profound act of kindness from Clint Eastwood, who had taken the time to see something in her that she couldn't yet see in herself. Clint's note had been a turning point, but it wasn't the only thing that had shaped Tiffany's journey. It was her own perseverance, her willingness to keep moving forward despite the odds, and her ability to see the potential in others that made her who she was today. She realized that Clint's note had been more than just encouragement. It had been a reminder of the power of belief. It wasn't just about believing in her. It was about believing in the capacity for change in everyone, no matter where they started. Tiffany's new role at a mental health program serving underserved communities was both challenging and rewarding. She worked tirelessly to support individuals facing generational trauma, stigma, and economic struggles. One day she met Brielle, a young mother overwhelmed by anxiety and doubt. Tiffany shared her own story of overcoming hardship, gradually earning Brielle's trust. Over time, Brielle began to believe in herself, thanks to Tiffany's unwavering support. Years passed, and Tiffany became a respected leader in her field, known for her ability to connect with people. At an event, she met Marcus, who proposed collaborating on a program for young adults transitioning out of foster care. Together, they created Next Step Forward, offering mental health resources, life skills training, and mentorship. The program thrived, transforming countless lives. One evening, Tiffany received a call from Clint Eastwood. He praised her work and reminded her of the ripple effect of kindness. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Tiffany reflected on how his small gesture of encouragement had inspired her journey. The program continued to expand, and Tiffany's dedication earned her recognition at an awards ceremony. On stage, she shared her story, emphasizing the profound impact of even the smallest acts of kindness. Her words resonated deeply, leaving the audience inspired. As she stepped down, Tiffany felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing she was living her purpose, spreading kindness, and creating ripples of change in the world.